All right, everybody, welcome back to the Centrella show. I'm excited for today's episode because I had a really amazing conversation a couple days ago with my guest today, Lauren Fields. I'm super excited to welcome you to the show. Lauren, welcome in.
Thank you, Sarah. It's an honor to now be on your show. Just a couple days ago, you were on the Fieldswell
Yes.
podcast. So,
Yep. I was on your show and we had this great conversation. And you know what I love about doing, being on each other's podcasts is that, like, we get an opportunity to learn the other side of the story, right? So you kind of heard my story on your show and now I get to hear yours. And I just love that because we're out here, we're building businesses, we're doing the things that we are passionate about, caring about. And the more people who know this information, to me is just that's everything. That's why we do it, right? So I'm excited to dive into our chat today. Now,
me too.
you're not only a podcast host, everybody. I'm going to put the link in the show notes, so make sure you go and subscribe and listen. But you're also the founder of Fieldswell, and I can't wait to hear more about that and tell us your entrepreneur journey. But before we kind of get started on this show, we love an origin story. We love to know how you got to where you're at today. We understand that it is a journey that probably happened long before anyone saw the results or the benefits of all that work that you put in. So can you take us back to the beginning? When did all of this start for you? What was a pivotal kind of life-changing moment for you?
So I started My original passion was horseback riding. I started riding when I was 6 years old. It was my life force to the point at one point I was homeschooled because I was going to the stables and riding all day, every day, competing all over the West Coast, did a couple of even shows on the East Coast, and was training to be the absolute best, holding myself to a very high standard of excellence. It taught me discipline. It taught me what it really took to become a champion. And when I was 14 years old, I was in a really bad horse accident where I was life flighted into a coma with a traumatic brain injury.
Oh my God.
And so when I was 14 years old, did I know that now at 32 years old, I'd be sitting here talking about it on podcasts? No, I didn't know it then that it would really become my North Star. But that horse accident, that traumatic brain injury, having a severe incident happen that caused neurological symptoms that impaired my gait mobility, my ability to walk. Walking became very painful. A common symptom from a traumatic brain injury is drop foot, where you can't lift one of your feet.
Oh my
And
God.
so all of these symptoms started happening, and I was in this victim mindset of why me? Why is this happening to me? And
Yeah.
trying to understand that at a young age was really hard. And I wanted to bury the story. I didn't want to talk about it. And that led into years of personal development work, of learning about the power of the mind and the power of our thoughts to kind of get us out of this victim
Yeah.
mindset, and how we can use anything that we've been through to our advantage. And that really became my wellness transformation journey, which is now called Fieldswell, which has become kind of this personal development ecosystem that exists now as a coaching practice, as a podcast, as events, as we just launched a merchandise line. I'm working on my first book. So it has become this whole brand and business that I'm so grateful for. But my origin story starts back to that traumatic brain injury and that
Wow.
horse accident.
Wow. I cannot even imagine going through something that traumatic, especially at a young age where, processing any of that had to have been just an additional trauma almost on top of everything because you're so young and you're at that point, it sounds like had been, so clear on what your dreams were and very dedicated to that. And how did, if you can remember, back in that like early and kind of dark time, how did you get through that, from like a mental state? I can only imagine how probably depression would come in, just all these things. It just feels like, oh my God, I have to genuinely start over from everything. Maybe the thing I've always loved, I can't do anymore. Like, what got you through that initial part?
I think it was to my benefit that I was 14 years old because I didn't understand the severity of the event at the time. And the neurological symptoms happened progressively in the years following. But immediately after the event, I was very fortunate. After a few months of brain fog, I felt like my life returned to some sort of normalcy. And what I was so fortunate about was that I had friends and family who really believed in me and were doing everything they could to make me feel supported and that I could continue my life as normal with conversations with my professors, with tutors, with just trying to do everything they could. So I think having a really strong support system at that time and having really rock solid, incredible parents helped
Yeah.
tremendously.
Yeah, absolutely. And then once you started kind of looking into development, what got you interested in like a personal development journey?
I was working at the time as a lifestyle manager in New York City. So I had this deck of private clients that I would plan their events, their dining, their travel, etc. And I realized because I was still going through my own bouts of like depression, still dealing with these neurological symptoms from this incident, um my own inner battle of feeling like I had a deeper purpose or a deeper meaning that I was supposed to help people in this world beyond making their lives beautiful on the outside. I really wanted to know how they were doing internally because
Mm,
I realized many of my clients, even though I could create beautiful experiences for them, that didn't always lead to them being fulfilled with their lives. And so
yeah.
that's when I really started the journey of health and wellness coaching, life coaching, yoga teacher training, a master's degree in psychology, learning about neuroscience. So I really wanted to become the one who could hold space for people on this deeper level and help them design lives rooted in purpose and meaning as opposed to just glitz and glam.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I love that you kind of had that intuitive pull or that call that was like, this is all great, the lifestyle, the outward, wealth, whatever, fabulous. We're all wanting to manifest all of that as part of it. But like, there's this other piece that without it, fulfillment doesn't exist. I don't believe, right? You really have to learn how to work on yourself, learn how to find happiness and balance and fulfillment and all that, then it makes all those other things like exponentially richer and better and, more fun, literally. But without it, it can be really hollow. What was the first kind of, I guess, maybe tool in this whole world of, you've done a lot of different things. Yoga is part of mind and body. Wellness has a big bucket of things that kind of fall into that. But what was something that was really impactful for you that you're like, this practice or this tool was a game changer for me?
One thing, and we touched on this when I had you on my podcast, was the power of our imagination. And so when I was living in New York City at this time and battling bouts of depression, I sought out therapy for the first time since my accident. So this was years later. And what I realized was in this therapy office, what I was doing was I was constantly reliving my past,
Mm.
constantly answering questions about my past, constantly feeling like I was tethered to and cemented to my past. And at that point, I realized I don't want someone to help me analyze my past. I want someone to help me design my future.
Ooh, and that's a
And
very different thing
so,
than therapy,
yeah,
right? It's a very different thing.
yes.
Yeah.
And so, who do I need to become in order to be able to create that space?
Mm.
To create a space where people feel safe to come and dream, to create a space where people feel safe enough to come home to themselves to imagine a better future. And so that took healing my own inner wounds and limiting beliefs. Yoga was a great pathway, meditation, journaling. I read hundreds of books
Yeah.
on personal development and self improvement, the education piece with all the learning through all the coaching certifications and the master's in psychology. But I really, at one point, was a forever student. And
Mm.
so, what I love to help my clients with now is clarity on what is it that you want, because I
Yeah.
think that's a really powerful question that many of us don't ever ask ourselves because we're so busy giving to others that we don't
Right.
even sit and get clear on what do I want?
Yeah. And I always say it's probably one of the hardest questions that you will ever ask yourself, but it seems so easy on the surface that most people discount it because they're like, oh yeah, and they name three super generic things like, oh, have $1 million or be debt free or whatever. And I'm like, like this question should be the hardest question you've ever asked yourself. If you really sit with it and can scope out the different areas of your life with that question, to me, that's really important too, is like, what does that look like in these different areas? What was your first kind of like big dream that your imagination helped to create back then?
I wanted to, I look back in my notes app on my iPhone and it says Fieldswell, a center for self-actualization. And so 7 years later, we're now sitting in that center, and it's wild because it doesn't always happen overnight. And
Yeah,
so it's
rarely
holding that
does.
vision, right? And many of us give up before it actually
Mhm.
becomes a reality. And so that's what I've learned. I believe I have a very strong ability to manifest. And the art of manifestation is you have to let go of the how and the when it's going to happen.
Amen. Amen. And it's hard. Those are the two I think hardest for most people to let go of because by nature we're control freaks and we feel like if we can't map out a very simple three-step process that gets us exactly what we want, exactly when we want it, then why bother at all or none of this works, whatever. I'm like, that is not the point. Like that is not how you do this at all. What was the first thing you noticed that you had manifested or that you were like really intentional about and got you into manifesting?
I believe that once I got really clear on my desires, I started to attract the people, places, and things to help me take just one more step. Just one more step forward, whether it be, for example, I was going to meet a neurosurgeon in North Carolina, and I met someone there who is part of the IIN, which is Institute for Integrative Nutrition Health Coaching Program. And she was in the program, and I knew I had wanted to become a coach. And so after meeting her, I eventually joined IIN. And it was just, I feel like little seeds planted along the way that helped guide and direct my path. And I feel like it's always been that way when I'm ready to level up, like someone comes into my life to help me take that next step.
Yeah, and I've definitely found too that the receiving part of manifesting, like the end result, if you will, the typically like comes in the form of an idea or an opportunity, or like you said, meeting a person, and it is rarely just this huge like, ta-da, here it is, red carpet, walk down the thing, like it's all perfectly planned for you. It's all right here. And so a lot of times people will miss it because they weren't looking for an opportunity or they weren't looking for an inspired idea. And they're just sitting here going like, where's the thing I wanted? Where's the thing I wanted? And it's like the universe is trying to give it to you 10 different ways, but you are resisting or not being aware.
Here's a story for you. So I went through a really difficult breakup. The man I thought was my person, I was about to turn 30. We were living together in Austin, Texas. And one day we were together, and it was almost essentially overnight, everything unraveled.
Mhm.
And those following months after that relationship were some of the most difficult of my life. I think I cried every day for 3 months,
Mhm.
but I knew that if I doubled down on my wellness practices and started to pursue the goals, the dreams that I had had on my list, whether it be give a TEDx talk, start a podcast, finally open my coaching practice, all those things I had been treating as optional extras in my life. So I really started to pursue them. And the first one was to give a TEDx talk. And so I started to reach out online. I found a coach who would help people write their TEDx talks.
Mhm.
She knew of someone who was hosting a TEDx event. So then I applied to the event. I landed the talk. 30 days later, I gave the talk. I met Mo Rock there at the talk, who owns the LA Tribune, and he was just starting a podcast network. So that led to me having a podcast and speaking on their network. And then, so it's like every little
Uh,
thing led to the next thing, but I was seeking it. I was
right.
chasing it. I was taking action toward it. I got clear on what I wanted and I moved toward it fiercely. And I think that's the thing. It's also like with this manifestation woo, it's not just saying like I want this and sitting around and waiting for it.
1,000%. Thank you for saying that. 10,000%. My very first book is called Hustle, Believe, Receive. And that was honestly kind of like a call out of the branding that was happening at the time. It was 10 years ago, but that was all about ask, believe, receive, sit around and just ask. And I was like, I don't know one person who's successful who sat around and did that. Every single person that I know who's successful had to put in the work, had to show up every day with intention, had to keep going in the face of a million no's, a million obstacles, a million disappointments, like you cannot sit around. Yes, there is a flow to get into. You can tell when you're in or out of that. I think most people can kind of tell when I'm not in a good energetic space. Then a lot of times my hustle doesn't go anywhere, or I feel like I'm kind of fighting myself, but I still have to hustle even when I'm in a good energetic space. It just feels the difference is to me is almost like I have tailwinds behind me pushing me when I'm in a good energetic space. And when I'm not, I'm just hitting that tailwind straight on. And so, yeah, I want to do the work through meditation or through these other wellness practices to make sure that energetically I am aligned with creating what matters the most to me and am in an energy to receive. But I have to show up every day. I have to do my part, and nothing is going to happen unless unless I do that. And I have to say, I went through a very similar, really devastating breakup over the last like 6 months, actually. Um, and I can relate to everything that you were saying. I manifested this man 100%. Like I had written out 6 pages of everything I wanted in a man and in a relationship and in who I wanted to be in a relationship. And 2 months later, I manifested him. We had a beautiful year and a half, healthy, wonderful relationship. We're in very different stages of life. He was about 10 years behind me as far as like where his kids are and stuff and where I am. So that, I mean, we both kind of knew that could be an issue at some point. It's a pretty big, gap as far as life stage goes. But it was amazing. And then literally like one day it was like, yeah, I don't think this is gonna work. And I was beyond devastated. I think a big reason too is like I knew I'd manifested him. So there's part of that that's like, is a manifestation an end all be all? And that very much taught me no, it's always a growth, right? It's a version. And everything that I learned from that is creating everything I'm building right now that I probably would not be building if we were still together, and help transform me into the best version of myself to be that much more ready for the next relationship that I do manifest. And I think it's probably, I'm curious to get your thoughts on look how much you have accomplished and achieved. Probably almost catapulted because of the breakup, right? Like,
That breakup lit the fire under me
yeah,
to finally be like, what are you waiting for?
get it done, girl.
Things
Get it
can
done.
change so
Yep.
quickly. Your life can change so quickly. Do it all while you can.
Amen.
Put yourself first for once. Get out your list of all the things you want to accomplish in your life and start checking them off.
Amen. There's like life is so short. We get one shot at it, one opportunity. You're never going to be as young as you are today. Like, come on. What are we waiting for? I love that. And there's so much that we're capable of that we have no idea we're capable of until we just get out there and start trying. Did you have any quote unquote imposter syndrome or whatever at the start of any of this when you
Oh,
when you
for
first got it?
sure. I
Yeah.
think that's what kept me being a forever student. I needed one more certification. I needed someone to tell me I was good enough to be a coach. I needed the validation. And I was like, I'm the one who needs to give that to myself. I will
Amen.
improve by starting. I will improve by experience. And so I would say if you're stuck in forever student mode, the best thing you can do is put yourself out there and get the real life experience and just do the thing.
Yep.
That's how you're actually going to improve. It's in the reps. For example, with the podcast now, we're 2 years in. The way you get to the top is by starting. Those who you admire, those who you look up to, they're there because they started. At one point, they were at the bottom too.
Yep. And I always say To me, imposter syndrome is such a dangerous label to put on yourself because it ultimately, and I've got a lot of flack for this, but I don't care. But to me, it ultimately becomes this crutch, right? It becomes a total excuse. It becomes well, because I have this, I can't really do it. And at the end of the day, all it ever is learning. It is learning. So, if you had a first job when you were 15 and it was McDonald's, you felt like you didn't know what you were doing, and everyone that worked your shift knew more than you. And it doesn't matter what it is that you're starting, you will never not feel like that. Never. So if you're waiting to not feel like that, you're out of your fucking mind. That isn't how life works.
I think readiness, I love this. Like, readiness isn't a feeling, readiness is a decision. Fear keeps people stuck because they fear they're going to fail at it. Failure to me is just not trying. At least you're going to learn
Yeah,
something. At least the next time you do it, you're going to be better because you've already done it.
exactly. The fear of failure to me is another one of those crippling reasons to not do it, right? Not to start. And at the end of the day, all of this comes back to what I'm telling myself, right? So if I'm telling myself I'm afraid to fail or whatever. So for me, that first piece is, what am I telling myself? And if I can start to change that immediately, address that first as like square one, the rest is going to come so much easier. And I'm not going to fight myself at every turn. Yeah.
Here's something I want to share with the audience. I heard someone say, nothing bad has ever happened to me. And I think we're so quick to
Wow.
label good or bad.
Yeah.
But wait, because when you say this horrible thing just happened to me, how do you know that in 1 year from now,
So
you're not
true.
going to be like, that was the best thing that ever happened to me?
That's
But
so
you
true.
saying this horrible thing happened to me, I'm suffering, I'm depressed, I'm alone, I'm this, you're programming that into yourself. So if
Yep.
you could instead say, thank you, I'm capable of handling this difficult experience. I can't wait to see who I become because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, to me, so much of I mean, everything that we go through is our learning or our preparation for what's next. And especially if you are trying your best to live an intentional life. If you have used your imagination to create what's next, if you've used your imagination to create your goals, your dreams, and then there's going to be a winding road to some of those. Some of those might come, fairly easily, maybe, like, or they'll feel that way, right? But it's all the work that you've done previously that got you to the moment where it feels really easy. But if you can kind of look at every one of those things as like, what am I supposed to be learning right now? This is happening for
Yes.
some sort of reason, and it's probably to teach me something. It's probably to prepare me in some way. That honestly, knowing that to be true, because I've been tracking it now for 15 years for myself, gives me a lot. That is what got me through that breakup last year. Is like, yes, this hurts. Yes, this sucks. Yes, this is disappointing, but this has to be happening for a reason. And so, like, my curious mind was like, "Ooh, what is that? What is that? What can I learn? What can I learn?"
And to think that we're supposed to know how everything's supposed to go.
Right.
Like, how are we the expert? Like, we can't predict the future. What if
Exactly.
God, spirit, source, whatever you believe in, has a much greater plan that you just can't see yet?
Yep. And when we fight it all the time, we're just blocking so much that was lined up, that was in the wings waiting for us based on all the desires we had put out before. So, like, let's not block it right here at the moment where we're about to break through.
Our fear, our need to control are causing us to vibrate at a low vibe, lack mentality frequency when we could just say, I trust, I surrender. Let's
Yeah.
dance, universe. Show me how good it's going to get.
Yeah. Do you have any practices that help you in those moments? And I'm sure with all that you've achieved, in the last couple of years, really like hitting some of the big goals that many people don't ever get to hit. Uh, any practices that help you get through the difficult times, the times that are a disappointment, the times that like your head might be going, maybe this isn't meant for you. Maybe you should not do this.
Here's a really helpful one. I catch a negative thought or limiting belief when it happens, and I take pen to paper and I write down the outcome that I want to happen instead.
I love that. Yeah.
And I keep writing it out. I'm a best-selling author. I gave a TEDx talk. I have a top podcast. I attract, you know, high paying, loyal clients. And you just keep repeating that, envisioning it, and writing it down instead of letting these negative limiting beliefs that aren't true repeat
Yep.
in your mind.
Yep.
So stop them, take pen to paper, and write out what you want instead.
1,000%. I love that you said that. One of the tools that I teach in my new book, Think It, is called mental tennis, and it's literally this tool that in the moment that you hear that thought or recognize the thought that's limiting or doubt filled or self sabotage, whatever you want to say, uh, to find the opposite of it, which is almost always what you want instead, almost always uh, or if you're having trouble finding what that is, just ask yourself that question. What do I want instead? Instead is like the best word ever. I have it in all my writing and I put it in italics. Instead. What do I want instead? If you can just find that and double down on that, tell yourself that over and over again. Like you said, write it out, write it out, write it out. There's so much power in writing it out. The faster everything starts lining up, the universe starts shifting to make those things happen for you. I love that.
It really is this belief that I am the creator of my reality. There are miracles and opportunities planted all around me so long as I am open and aware of them. I had this author, Jim Cathcart, and speaker. He's written over 100 books on personal, I think close to 100 books on personal development. And one of his quotes is, how would the person I'd like to be do the things that I'm about to do?
Ooh, I like that. Yeah.
So future you identity, how would they hold themselves? How would they walk into a room? What would they wear? How would they speak? How would they think?
Creating that new identity. I've been talking a lot about this on this show because my audience knows that I've been working on that transformation actively since the beginning of the year, working on the back end of it to get me here for the last couple of years. But then this year was like a definite. This is the year that I am her. I'm no longer preparing. I'm no longer doing whatever. Like I'm stepping into her, and so I had to find all these like very tangible ways to help me like physically do that, I guess. And one of those was, if I envisioned that the future me is graceful, successful, well known, whatever, your things are, you can go through your own list. And I saw an image of literally like how she walks into a room, how people interact with her, how she feels about herself. Part of that was like she had great style. She was like graceful and elegant. And so I was like, all right, let me figure that out. My whole life I've always wanted to be that, but I just never ever quite found my style my whole life. And I was like, this is the time I'm gonna fucking figure it out. I'm gonna get the apps. I'm gonna like figure out how to put the outfits together the way I want to. And so like every day since the beginning of the year, I'm like part of that is like doing my hair and makeup every day, even if I don't leave the house, other than my daily walk. And getting the outfits. I literally updated my wardrobe. I dress the way she would dress every day, even if I don't leave the house. Because I'm like, I want to embody her now so that when all that stuff happens, that's just my normal, it's already normal routines by then. I'm comfortable in this because that takes a little while getting comfortable in a new look and a new everything anyway. So anything that you've ever done that kind of helps you embody that next version of yourself?
Well, I believe that when you feel attractive, you attract opportunities to you.
Absolutely.
So, what do you need to do to feel attractive in your body? So
Yep.
much of it is the mental game, the mindset, the affirmations. I love the I am statements.
Yep.
But it's also for me, it's eating well. It's moving my body every day. It's loving myself and caring for myself because I believe how you treat yourself teaches others how to treat you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it raises your bar to the level that you can very quickly see when people aren't treating you well, right? Like you no longer kind of have to set the boundaries you had to in the beginning of maybe a personal growth journey because now you are a different person. And as such, you start attracting a better caliber of people around you who you don't always have to set boundaries with. But also like people notice that when you love and respect yourself, there's so much more apt to treat you with that same respect. Like you kind of don't have to deal with maybe the disrespect that you might have before.
One thing that I realized that I've needed in this chapter of my life is more fun and more play. I've been so disciplined for so long now that I realized I really crave a life beyond like the four walls of our headquarters here,
Yeah.
and that it's important to schedule play in your calendar instead of just chasing success. How can you schedule time for play or for fun, whether that looks like dancing with your friends or going out to dinner, maybe taking a weekend trip? I think that can be really helpful for our listeners who maybe feel stuck or like they've just been chasing success. How can you kind of step away from it for a minute and just get a fresh perspective and elevate your vibe by having some fun?
Yeah, absolutely. Passions and joys is one of the areas that I coach in my method as far as like when I'm setting my vision for my future. I always have people do it in five core categories of life, and that is one. And it's the one that most people pay the least attention to or don't ever think about because they're like, I'm busy, I have too much going on, I don't want to spend money on frivolous things or whatever. And I'm like, it's that also the number one category that if you are not paying attention to it is the reason why you feel overwhelmed, burned out, exhausted, the list goes on. But if you know how to bring in things that bring you joy and things that I kind of think of it as a category of doing, like you just said, like take a trip or go dancing or learn a skill, learning a skill that you've always wanted, like maybe I always want to play guitar. Maybe I always want to learn another language. Something like that is so valuable on every aspect. I mean, you studied neuroscience, so I'm sure there's a ton of science behind what that does for our brain and helps our brain to learn a new skill. But it also gives you fulfillment. It makes you proud. It builds your confidence. It does so many positive things that if we just took the time to say, hey, what do I enjoy? Like, what are some
Yeah.
things that are fun? And I bet I could integrate it in some way, shape, or form into next week. Like, listeners, go
We
do
all like we
that.
all like being around people who are fun, who are multifaceted, who do an array of different things.
Exactly. Yep. I love that so much. What is the best advice that someone gave you along this journey? Maybe have you ever had like a good mentor and some good advice that you've gotten along the way?
I've had a lot of great mentors. I'm going to bring this in from Bill Walsh. He's a business coach, and he says, "You belong in every room."
Hmm.
And I love that because we can often feel small in certain rooms or like, who am I to be here? But it's not about proving yourself. It's about going in with curiosity and learning as much as you can. There was probably a 2-year circuit where I went to as tons of business conferences, networking events, just to meet all of the leaders in the industry. And I've maintained those relationships. And I think are what have helped me grow at a rapid pace is that I went in with curiosity and I put myself in the rooms where those who I looked up to were hosting, were leading, so that I could learn from them and be as close to them as possible. Beyond those rooms, I then joined their networking groups or signed up for a VIP day with them. But it's like, how can you get as close as possible to those who you look up to?
And also, I think there's something truly to be said about just even if you're not in a position to work with them or do some of the other things, just being in the room and watching how someone like that operates, right? Like how they command a stage or how they interact with people publicly. And then also like if you get a chance to like view how they interact behind the scenes, how they treat the waiter or whatever, just any observation. I think I've learned so much from being in the room and observing how people operate, both good and bad. Like I have my little checklist that I run that's like, okay, don't ever do that. Okay, I loved that. I love, you know, the command of the stage or whatever the case is. And I think you can learn so much through being around. That proximity is super important. It helps you level up your game for sure.
Put yourself in the rooms that scare you, challenge you, kind of force you to evolve. And listen, if there's something you want to build, do, or create, I'm sure there's someone who has done something similar. Follow the steps,
Yeah.
like learn from them and follow the steps and begin at once.
Beginning once. I love that. What is the book that you're writing? Tell us a little bit about what you want to put into the
So,
world.
sure. The book is called Send It. So, I have this formula that I use for transformation. And quickly, I'll go through the
Yeah.
formula. So it's frame of mind, to have a growth mindset and believe in yourself, to have a clear intention and vision for what it is you want to create and who you want to become. Environment, put yourself in the right rooms around the right people. Then your lifestyle, get your movement, your sleep, your nutrition and your spirituality in check. D, discipline, do the things you say you're going to do. And then S is send it. Put yourself out there.
Mm.
Take the risk, jump off the cliff, do the thing, because you really have to venture into the unknown. And once you have worked that formula, like sometimes I have to go back to mindset. Sometimes I have to go back to the vision work. Sometimes I have to check out my environment. But I really believe that those are the pillars that will get you unstuck. Those are the pillars that will help you step into future you and really become the one who actualizes their potential.
Ooh, I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, let's leave it there, but tell everybody where to find all the good stuff about you and how they can work with you and all of that.
Sure. So I am most active on Instagram, my chosen platform. You can follow me on my personal account. It's my name, Lauren Fields. Also, Fieldswell has an Instagram. You can listen to the Fieldswell podcast on all platforms. You can visit fieldswell.com. You can visit our headquarters here in Rancho Santa Fe, San Diego, where we host different workshops. You can come do a personal branding day with me. You can come start your podcast in our studio. I also work with clients virtually. So if you would like help with your personal brand, with visibility and showing up online, or with starting your show, let me know.
Yeah, I love that so much. Thank you so much for all your wisdom today, Lauren. Absolutely love this conversation. Everybody, don't forget to leave a review on whatever platform you are listening to this podcast on. Share it and comment. It's so important, helps us to continue to do this work and be encouraged by it. Thank you once again, Lauren, for being on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Sarah, thank you for having me.
All right, everybody. And until next time, get out there and thrive.